Next to Normal is a musical following a family living in the American suburbs. Its story centers on a mother and her struggles with bipolar disorder, along with the impacts of her illness on her husband and daughter. It ran on Broadway at the Booth Theatre from March 2009 to January 2011, with very favorable reviews praising its depiction of mental illness and emotional core. In the 2009 Tony Awards, it was nominated for 11 awards and won three. Perhaps most notably, it also won the 2010 Pulitzer Prize for Drama, becoming the eighth musical in history to ever do so. As of today, only 10 musicals have ever received this honor. Over the years, there have been numerous productions of Next to Normal, including many independent international productions. In 2023, the show received its London premiere at the Donmar Warehouse. This production then transferred to the West End in 2024 at the Wyndham's Theatre and was professionally filmed over 3 days. The pro shot recently aired on PBS's Great Performances and is set to play in UK theatres in September. Now, of course, all of this can be read from Wikipedia. Hell, most of this was taken from Wikipedia. But what Wikipedia can't tell you is this: it's the best fucking musical I've ever seen. Yeah, I've read critics' praises for this show, but that didn't at all prepare me for the emotional roller coaster I went on while watching a shaky and grainy bootleg filmed in 480p on an iPhone 4 in 2010. And yeah, I've read all about the awards it's won, but that sure as hell didn't prepare me for the intense crying session I had while watching the pro shot from the PBS website with a VPN. So, after 2 years of obsessing over this musical, I finally decided to get my shit together and do something productive with my thoughts. What I want to cover in this video are some of the aspects of Next to Normal that made me fall in love with it, namely, its discussion on mental illness treatment, the personification of grief, and how it generates empathy. Of course, there are so many other parts of Next to Normal that are absolutely incredible, but I simply do not have the words to even remotely do them justice. So just a quick disclaimer, as you can probably tell by now, this is the first time I've ever made a YouTube video. I've almost never done video editing before, I don't have a professional microphone, and I'm doing this on a free app because I cannot afford anything else. This is an incredibly self-indulgent project, and it's probably gonna end up really disjointed. This is just 30 minutes of me screaming my thoughts into the void, because I have to talk about this freaking musical. So take this as your warning for the overall quality of this video, because it's, not great. And I think this goes without saying, but I'm not a mental health expert and I don't have bipolar disorder. This video only covers my personal interpretation of this show and my personal opinions on the topics it covers. There are many different things you can take away from Next to Normal, and I'm in no way saying that my thoughts are the correct ones. Okay, just a few last things I have to say before the video actually starts. You see this on the screen right here? That is a huge spoiler warning. There are going to be spoilers in this video. If you have not watched Next to Normal, I highly encourage you to click off right now and watch the pro shot on the PBS website, link in the description. Get a VPN if you don't live in the US, I swear it'll absolutely be worth it. But do take note of the content warnings. Next to Normal covers some very heavy topics. In this video, I'll specifically mention the ones listed on screen right now. The full list of content warnings provided by the UK production is also linked in the description. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's finally begin.
The memories will wane, the aftershocks remain. You wonder which is worse, the symptom or the cure.
It should go without saying that Next to Normal is extremely critical of the way mental illnesses are handled and treated. At multiple points in the story, it explicitly highlights some potential side effects of certain treatment methods. One entire verse of the third number is dedicated to listing out the side effects of Diana's medication. Another verse of the third number is dedicated to listing out the ridiculous amount of medication Diana has to take. Hell, basically the entire third number is dedicated to criticizing the way medication is used to treat mental illnesses. And if that's not enough, the show even utilizes Diana's emotionless state after taking new medication and her memory loss after ECT as major plot points. The message could not be clearer. The way we treat mental illnesses leaves much to be desired. And most musicals would end the discussion right there. But Next to Normal is not like most musicals. Enter Dr. Madden. From the very first time we see him, Dr. Madden is presented as a sort of alternative. In contrast to Dr. Fine, who wears a formal suit, he instead wears casual clothing. Rather than bombarding Diana with pills, he proposes to start with talk therapy. He's the one to suggest hypnosis early on in his sessions with Diana, and he's even the one to bring up ECT as a last resort to Dan. He's portrayed as the good doctor who respects Diana's wishes and is open to alternative treatment options. This is in direct contrast to Dr. Fine, who is portrayed as a more traditional doctor who sticks to pills and seems to ignore Diana's protests. All of this leads up to one of Dr. Madden's last scenes. After undergoing ECT, Diana suffers a relapse, and Dr. Madden is trying to convince her to continue treatment. And then, this happens.
Turn to talk therapy. There's still work to do.
Baby, I'll let myself fall. Watch me unfold.
We might have to look at
Baby, the fall
a new drug regimen.
isn't so.
Did you catch that? A new drug regimen. From Diana's perspective, this would be eerily similar to Dr. Fine's approach to treating her illness. All of the exploration of alternative treatment options that Dr. Madden so enthusiastically recommended, just to go right back to taking pills and taking away her emotions. But then, Dr. Madden brings in a new perspective to this discussion, one that, up to this point, has been noticeably left out of the conversation.
Diana, you have a chronic illness. Like diabetes or hypertension, if left untreated, it could be catastrophic. Stay with me, try again. Is medicine magic? You know that it's not. We know it's not perfect, but it's what we've got. It's all that we've got.
It's all that we've got. Next to Normal doesn't just criticize the way we treat mental illnesses. It also acknowledges that, unfortunate as it is, sometimes the options with all the bad side effects are also the only options we have. Of course, this doesn't mean that we should just deal with the side effects and not work on improving treatment options. In fact, Next to Normal is pretty clear in its message that there is a lot more to be done. But sometimes, particularly for more serious and chronic mental illnesses, simply not treating them could end up creating even worse consequences. Like Dr. Madden points out,
The one thing that's sure is that there is no cure, but that doesn't mean we don't fight.
I know that compared to other topics that Next to Normal deals with, this is a relatively small part of the show. But it's still astounding to me how little I see fans talk about it. A real ongoing and contentious debate was masterfully woven into the storyline, portraying both sides with equal respect. The show then ultimately makes a nuanced argument, while leaving room for viewers to make their own conclusions. Viewers are encouraged to critically think about an important issue and carefully reflect on the perspectives they're presented with. This is something I don't see many musicals doing, least of all pulling it off without something preachy. And it's one of the main things about Next to Normal that stand out to me, no matter how many times I watch it.
My son.
Tell me about him.
About my son.
Why is he still around? Who is he? What is he?
Okay, I'm gonna try to get through this part with minimal fangirling over Aaron Tveit and Jack Wolf. Wish me luck. Whenever I see fans analyzing Next to Normal, 90% of the time this exact topic will come up. And very understandably so. Gabe is an extremely interesting character to dissect, and the way the show is framed leaves a lot of ambiguity about him. In particular, the staging, blocking, and direction of the London production make it a little vague as to who or what Gabe actually is. On the one hand, no one other than Diana seems to look him in the eye or acknowledge and interact with him, at least until the very end. At certain points, Gabe only reacts to a situation after Diana has already reacted, and his reactions always seem to reflect Diana's. One prime example of this is when Dr. Madden suggests hypnosis. Gabe starts laughing only after Diana laughs,
Hypnosis can be helpful.
I don't think I could.
and he adopts the same body language as Diana. On the other hand, while the other characters don't directly interact with Gabe, they suddenly do seem to react to him. One instance I always see people talk about is Natalie having a reaction to Gabe's touch near the end. There's a lot of ways you can make sense of all this. For example, I've seen people interpret that there's a supernatural element to this, that Gabe is a real physical construct that everyone could see but chooses to ignore. Personally, I interpreted Gabe as just a representation of each character's grief, and by extension, the grief that hangs over this family and taints all of their interactions. The main reason for this is that beyond mirroring Diana, Gabe weirdly also seems to reflect Dan's thoughts and feelings as well. For example, during I Am the One, some of Gabe's lyrics, like these ones,
Are you bleeding? Are you waiting? Are you wishing? Are you wanting all that she can't give? Are you bruised? Are you broken? Are you hurting? Are you healing? Are you hoping for a life to live? Does it help?
seem to repeat Dan's thoughts during Who's Crazy.
And I was a wild 25, and I loved a wife so alive. But now I believe I would settle for one who can drive.
To me, this means Gabe exists outside of Diana's mind, but is also somehow privy to Dan's inner thoughts. Again, this is just my personal opinion, but I just wanted to make this clear because the rest of this section builds off of this. So, just for a second, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the director or the actor for Gabe in a production of Next to Normal. If grief were a person, what kind of person would he be? How would he act? What kind of mannerisms would he have? How would he interact with the other characters? There's no single correct answer to these questions. This is most evident from contrasting the two most famous portrayals of Gabe, Aaron Tveit, who played Gabe on Broadway, and Jack Wolf, who played Gabe in London. Of course, there have been many productions of Next to Normal and many other portrayals of Gabe, but there's a lot less documentation of them, if you will. Let's start with Aaron Tveit. For lack of a better word, Aaron's Gabe is very angry. Angry that his father keeps casting him out, angry that his sister hates him despite never having met him, angry that his mother tries to get rid of him once she learns he isn't real, angry that his family refuses to look him in the eye. So he does all he can to force his family to acknowledge his existence. From the moment you learn that Diana is hallucinating him, he feels sinister and almost malicious. Yet you can't put your finger on exactly why until he convinces Diana to commit suicide. From that point onwards, whenever Gabe is in a scene, you're on the edge of your seat. You feel your stomach drop. What is he going to do next? Is someone going to get hurt? How do we get rid of him? Now let's compare this with Jack's Gabe. At the start, almost everything feels the same, which makes sense since Diana, and by extension you, the viewer, don't yet know what Gabe truly represents. Right up to the big twist. From there, the difference is almost immediately evident. Where Aaron's Gabe was angry and sinister, Jack's Gabe comes off as mischievous and almost playful. And most importantly, he seems vulnerable, like a little kid, like Diana's sweet baby boy. And that's exactly the most dangerous part. He's not forcing his family to acknowledge him. He's suddenly drawing them in until they're so invested in this illusion that they have to acknowledge him. Where Aaron's Gate makes you wonder how you could get rid of him, Jack's Gate convinces you to never want to get rid of him in the first place. I'm not saying either of these portrayals are better than the other. In fact, I don't know which one I prefer. Both portrayals mess with the viewers and are so fucked up in their own ways. And I love that we have these two interpretations of Gabe. I think they reflect how grief affects different people in different ways, or more accurately, how different people react to grief in different ways. To some, grief is something they want to get rid of as quickly as possible. It's a malicious force that only seeks to hurt. It takes and takes and takes until you become a shell of the person you once were. To others, grief is a way of remembering those they lost. Their memories of their loved ones are, in a way, what's keeping the dead alive. And in some cases, these memories are all they have to prove to the world that this person once existed, that they were loved, and are still loved even in death. I think this exchange between Dan and Diana sums this duality out really well.
Why would you want to remember the things that hurt you?
want to remember everything, Dan.
We'll get a new round. We'll go back to Dr. Fine.
No!
Diana, look, I know this is hard.
Oh, you know? Really? What exactly do you know?
I know that you're hurting, all right? I am too.
So while I was trying to satiate my next to normal obsession by consuming every single piece of media that exists, I came across this behind the scenes video from PBS. And there's this one sentence Casey releases that really stuck with me and inspired me to make this video in the first place.
The beauty and the magic of this show is there's no good guy and there's no bad guy. And so it was very interesting to see who people latched onto based off their own lived experience, who they felt was in the wrong, who they felt was in the right, what that gray area is.
I found this really interesting because I started to look back at my own life experiences. I know what it's like to love someone who's battling and losing to an invisible enemy. I know how despairing it feels to try your absolute best to support them, and to also know deep down that nothing you're doing is helping, that your love is doing more harm than good. I also know what it's like to be a teenager whose mother was diagnosed with a chronic illness and was in and out of hospitals during the worst period of their life. I know the anger that comes with your mother not being there for you while you're struggling and having to work through your struggles all by yourself. And I know the guilt that comes with knowing you're blaming her for something that isn't her fault. Given my experiences, you'd think I would have immediately attached myself to Dan or Natalie, but I didn't, at least not at first. On my very first watch, the character I found myself most attached to was Diana. Of course, I've had other experiences that allowed me to relate to small parts of what Diana goes through, and I definitely attached myself more to Dan and Natalie on subsequent watches. But I think this perfectly demonstrates one of the things that makes Next to Normal a top-tier musical to me. There are a lot of musicals that focus on mental health or grief as a main theme, especially in recent years. Just to list out some of the more well-known ones: Spring Awakening, Rent, Beetlejuice, Heathers, and I really am sorry for bringing up this show, Dear Evan Hansen. And all of these musicals, or well, most of them, are very good at raising awareness of mental health and generating sympathy from the audience. But Next to Normal takes this one step further. It aims not just to generate sympathy, but to generate empathy. This is done to some extent for every character. The show is very good at fleshing out their desires and motivations and helping you understand these characters on a very deep level. But where Next to Normal truly stands out from other musicals is the empathy it generates for Diana. The show very deliberately puts the audience in Diana's shoes. In fact, the in-universe reason that Next to Normal is a musical is that Diana views her life as a musical. We, the audience, see these scenes from Diana's eyes, we hear what Diana hears, and we feel what Diana feels. The manic energy, the despair, the depression, the fear, even the lack of any emotion. That disjointedness you feel, where what your brain knows doesn't compute with what your eyes see, where you start to question everything you've seen up to that point, reflects how Diana feels. While doing research for this video, I found this review of the Singapore production of Next to Normal produced by Pandemonium, which I think describes this better than I can. As the story develops, I find myself constantly giving out self-reminders. I try hard to keep in mind what's real to me and what's real to Diana. But the very fact that this is acted in theatre right on the stage completely drives me insane. I suppose that's the point, to put the audience in the shoes of bipolar patients. Creating awareness of bipolar, or in fact any type of mental disorder, is a very meaningful goal. Many aim for it, but most fail to achieve it. Why, you may ask? Because organizations fail to realize that the key to creating awareness for mental disorders is beyond sympathy. You chance upon a production, you buy the tickets, the seats were pretty comfy, you sit back and watch the show. Now time to head home for a good sleep. Period. That is sympathy. Watching from your own comfort zone while you're overflowing with pity, going, oh, poor thing. And guess what's the underlying meaning to that? Hope my kids don't turn out this way. Pandemonium's Next to Normal has achieved the epitome of empathy. the ability to understand, the ability to identify, the ability to think and feel to an almost similar extent as someone with this condition. And the only way to achieve that is to allow one to experience life from the perspective of a bipolar patient. Next to Normal doesn't just tell the audience that there are people who have mental illnesses. It dares to make the audience experience a little bit of life as someone with a chronic mental illness sees it. Of course, it's impossible to portray the full spectrum of what life is like to a mental illness patient, and different patients experience life in different ways. Most of us will never be able to fully understand the struggles they face. But Next to Normal, which understands that generating empathy, even a small amount of it, is an extremely important first step to raising awareness and ultimately removing the stigma surrounding mental illness. I spent a long time thinking about how I want to end this video. I wanted to make a grand statement tying up everything I've talked about with a neat little bow, like this is a dissertation I have to submit for my final project. But then I realized this video is kind of all over the place and I have no idea what I'm doing. The audio keeps glitching. I realized halfway through recording that I kept reading Erin's last name as Tevitt, so I had to re-record most of part 3. A consistent tone, never heard of her. And I'm not even in uni yet, so why am I writing this like a dissertation? So yeah, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for tolerating the quality of this video. I've done my best with what I have, but what I have is also not very much, and I can't bring myself to buy a professional mic or pay for a professional video editing software for a video that probably no one would watch. There are a lot of things I love about Next to Normal but didn't cover in this video. If you'd like to rant about them, please leave a comment about it. Please, I'm actually begging you to do that. There's so much I want to say about this show, and no one in my life is on the same wavelength as me about this. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.